Hello, my name is Connie McCarter, and welcome back. This is another in our series of interviews with the founders of Greater St. John Missionary Baptist Church. And today we have here with us Eric Kirk, and he is the grandson of Reverend Billy W. Kirk, who was a former pastor here at Greater St. John. Welcome, Eric.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
As my dad would say, kicking upside the wall.
Oh, that is awesome. And I heard that was one of his most favorite sayings. And I'm so happy that you're continuing on with the legacy of your grandfather. And since you're here with us today, would you like to share, or could you share, a little bit of background about your grandfather with the rest of our congregation and the South Bend community?
Yes, ma'am. I must have been in high school I was in the 8th grade, and Dr. B.W. Kirk became the intern pastor here in 1980, and I thought that my dad had retired. I said, wow, wait, Dad. You know, this was a monumental church in the city because of Dr. White, Reverend Jimmy Jones, and my dad had been coming over here doing Reverend Jones' anniversaries for years, and I never would have thought that the church would have called him. Well, that the Lord would have put him in line to be the next pastor. And I had mixed emotions. You know, my time became shorter with him. I didn't get to play golf with him as much being a pastor. And then he was back out in the community heavily with building projects with the church. And then one significant thing the church started, and it went throughout the county, was a kneeling prayer bench that they built, which would have been on the corner at the old church, and the prayer bench went all over St. Joe County. Black, white, Mexican, Catholic, everybody, and I still have mine today, go in my prayer room and I kneel down. And that was a significant thing, and my dad was always helping the community, and I had to share him with everybody. And I had gotten used to him being retired. I said, oh Lord.
Okay. And so looking back on your memory, I'm looking here at some of the accomplishments your grandfather had here at the church. Thinking back about he was here when the new church basement was completed, and he was pivotal in the garage being built for the church van, and that he was here when this current church was completed back in 1981.
Yes,
one of the other momentous occasions was when the mortgage was burned then in 1995. And then in July of 2000, the new Christian Education Center was completed as well under his leadership. And then also, just to think about, so you're thinking about it on a personal level, I'm going to expand on that a little bit and just talk about the fact that Reverend Kirk also received an honorary doctorate from Bethel College in 2001.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That was a very monumental time, I would say, in his life. And in the Kirk family as well, he's never told me that he went to Bethel. So that was a great surprise to me. And then this church became a pillar in the community.
And so by him being out in the community and being involved in so many activities, then that helped to make the foundation that Greater St. John is a very community-based church.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Very community-based. Every time the city of South Bend had something, it was held at Greater St. John.
That is phenomenal. And that's great to recognize that under that leadership that we were still bringing in the community. And if I look at some of his other accomplishments, looking at the fact that there is a scholarship that has been named after him to assist minority culture students in their pursuit of Christian education at Bethel College as well.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I don't know if the president is still there. His first name is Dennis. I can't think of his last name, but he was very fond, as well as the president of Bethel was very fond of my dad because he lived what he preached.
And that is a blessing that he was a man of God and he walked the walk as well as taught
Yes,
the
ma'am.
talk. Yes. And you mentioned golf. I have a little note here that says Pastor Kirk golfed with the Par Putters, which was a black league that's still going strong here.
Still going. Pastor Kirk thought and loved about golf the way I am about basketball. He has a major influence on, at that time, I would say probably about a half of the membership never played golf because Pastor Kirk would get up in the pulpit. My grandson and I, we golfed yesterday, such and such. That was an influence. And a lot of people who thought golf was yucky became very good, avid golfers.
Now, see, under his leadership, thinking about how we bring, I'm going to say, our black community into sports that we wouldn't normally be exposed to. And as we were coming in, you said one of his favorite sayings. Would you like to repeat what that is? Howard asked you, how are you doing?
Oh, and I said, kicking upside the wall.
That is so wonderful.
Pastor Kirk would say that you would never know that he was down and out in pain because that would come out before you had the opportunity to even say, Pastor Kirk, you don't look like you feel well. I'm kicking upside the wall.
And it sounds like you're still keeping that saying going.
And it's not by chance. It just so happens I've been around him all my life. It just comes out. Even when I'm at church, it just comes out.
And so that legacy lives on through you.
Yes, ma'am.
And Eric, now can you tell us what you do since you reside in Indianapolis, Indiana?
Well, I'm a licensed ordained minister by Pastor Kirk. I belong to Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church, where the Reverend Dr. Carl Z. Liggins Sr. is my pastor. And I also belong to a apostolic church, Grace Apostolic. I'm an armor bearer. So I have to be doing something right for two different denominations and two different churches to ask me to watch over their pastor.
And that is wonderful, that you're still following in the footsteps and still leaning on God and leaning on the Lord to guide you through.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything else you'd like to add in culminating about the 100th anniversary of Greater St. John in talking about your grandfather, Reverend Billy W. Kirk?
I would just like to add that he is missed sorely and greatly. He loved young folks. This was one of the first churches in the state that brought back trophies for drill team stepping. That's back in the 90s and early, that was a very big thing. But due to COVID, they haven't been going to different things. But, you know, the young folks was his thing. And then growing up, he has left an impression on my life that I have instilled in my children. You know, I don't bash them about going to church all the time, because when you bash them, you normally push them further left. And I've learned not to do that. Even my grandchildren, Papa, can we go hear you preach today? Get your mom and daddy, then you can go. But I'm so proud of Greater St. John continuing his legacy, continuing to still be a beacon of light and helping folks and exemplifying love. He was about love. One of the things that he started, we used to have to bring cans that was a long time ago. Bring canned goods, benevolent. No other church I had ever heard had started doing that. He would feed the hungry. And we used to have the original church office was right here across the street from Frankie's. It was a house. And one day I walked into Pastor Kirk's office, and it was about 3,000 cans stacked from the floor to the ceiling. And I was just grateful. He's taught me how to be a better man, certainly a better preacher, better pastor, just all around brother, friend. And I try and make my video match my audio. That's for the young folks. What that is, I can't live and preach something different contrary to the Word of God. So if I'm going to tell you about Jesus, I want you to see Jesus within me. Don't look at me, look at Jesus. And he makes the difference.
Well, Eric, I thank you so much for coming and joining us and sharing that wonderful information about your grandfather. And I'm going to say to you, keep on believing in God, keep on doing what you're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you once again for joining us for this interview. And thank you all for joining us for another in the series of interviews with the descendants of the leaders from Greater St. John. Keep an eye out. There's more to come